World War II was a devastating war that lasted from September 1939 to September 1945. The war was fought between the Axis powers and their allies, who were led by Germany, Italy, and Japan, as well as the Allied powers and their allies, led by Britain, France, and Russia. Although it is often said that the war began when France and Britain declared war on Germany as a result of its invasion of Poland, the causes that led to the war are more intricate. There were a variety of factors leading to the Second World War. Here are 5 major causes which led to World War II. The Treaty of Versailles and the German desire for revenge. German combatants had felt betrayed by the signing of the armistice on 11 November 1918 amidst domestical political unrest that was driven by a civilian context of war fatigue and hunger. Some of the high-profile agitators at this time were left-wing Jews, which fueled the conspiracy theory of a Jewish Bolshevik disloyalty that later gained so much traction as Hitler laid the psychological groundwork in preparing Germany for another war. The devastating experience of the First World War left the victorious nations and their people desperate to avoid a repeat. At the insistence of the French, the terms of the Versailles Treaty were punitive in the extreme and left Germany destitute and its people feeling victimized. Nationalistic Germans were therefore increasingly open to ideas posted by anyone who offered the chance of rectifying the Versailles humiliation. Economic downturns. Economic downturn can always be relied upon to create conditions of civil, political, and international unrest. Hyperinflation hit Germany hard in 1923-24 and facilitated the early development of Hitler's career. Although recovery was experienced, the fragility of the Weimar Republic was exposed by the global crash that hit in 1929. The ensuing Great Depression in turn helped to create conditions such as widespread unemployment that facilitated the National Socialist Party's fatal rise to prominence. Nazi ideology and Lebensraum. Hitler exploited the Treaty of Versailles and the dents in German pride and defeat in war had created by instilling a renewed sense of extreme national pride. Hitler identified the German nation with Aryan supremacy over all other races, amongst whom particular disdain was reserved for Slavic, Romani, and Jewish people. This would have dire consequences throughout the years of Nazi regime. As early as 1925, through the publication of Mein Kampf, Hitler had outlined an intention to unite Germans across Europe in a reconstituted territory that included Austria before securing vast tracts of land beyond this new reach that would ensure self-sufficiency. In May 1939, he explicitly referred to the oncoming war as being bound up with the pursuit of the Lebensraum to the east, with this referring to the whole of Central Europe and Russia up to the Volga, the rise of extremism and the forging of alliances. Europe emerged with World War I a very changed place, with swaths of political ground being taken up by players on the extreme right and extreme left. Stalin was identified by Hitler as a key future adversary, and he was wary of Germany being caught territorially between the Soviet Union in the east and a Bolshevik Spain, together with a leftist French government in the west. Thus he chose to intervene in the Spanish Civil War in order to bolster the right-wing presence in Europe, while trailing the effectiveness of his new air force. During this time, the friendship between Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy was also strengthened, with Mussolini also keen to protect the European right, while gaining the first place from which to benefit from German expansion. Germany and Japan signed the Anti-Comintern Pact in November 1936. The Japanese increasingly distrusted the West following the Wall Street crash and held designs on subjugating China in a manner that echoed Nazi objectives in the east of Europe. Superficially, the most unlikely of diplomatic agreements was established in August 1939, when the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact was signed. In this act, the two powers effectively carved up the perceived buffer zone that existed between them in Eastern Europe and paved the way for the German invasion of Poland. The failure of appeasement. American isolationism was a direct response to the European events of 1914 to 1918 that the US had ultimately become embroiled in. This left Britain and France already terrified by the prospect of another war, without a key ally in world diplomacy during the tense interwar period. This is the most commonly highlighted in relation to the toothless League of Nations, another product of Versailles, which patently failed in its mandate to prevent a second global conflict. Through the mid-1930s, the Nazis rearmed Germany in spite of the Treaty of Versailles and without sanctions or protest from Britain or France. With continuing disregard for the treaty, German troops reoccupied the Rhineland in March 1936. Simultaneously, these developments added to Hitler's legend within Germany and provided much-needed employment, while encouraging the Führer to push for an appeasement to the limit. Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister from 1937 to 1940, is the man most closely associated with the appeasement of Nazi Germany. The retributive conditions placed on Germany at Versailles meant that many other potential challengers to Hitler choose to concede the German right to claim rather than confront him and risk antagonizing war. An overwhelming preference for peace amongst British and French citizens had continued to prevail in the years prior to 1939. This is highlighted by the brandishing of Churchill and others who warned of Hitler's threat as a warmonger. There was a sea change in public opinion following Hitler's appropriation of the remainder of Czechoslovakia in 1939, which contemptuously disregarded the Munich Treaty. Chamberlain then guaranteed Polish sovereignty, a line in the sand that was forced by the prospect of German domination in Europe. Although many still choose to believe the now inevitable prospect of war was unthinkable, German actions on 1st September 1939 signaled the start of a new major conflict in Europe, only 21 years since finale of the war to end all wars, that is the First World War. So that's pretty much it for this week. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Until next week, thank you and goodbye.